I'm going to invite our panelists to come up front and get comfortable while I finish making the introductions. I brought a couple of visual aids with me because it's my favorite thing to do to forget to tell you something I meant to tell you. We have these handouts at the back of the book table. I invite you to take them. If you'd like, you can find it out online as well. These are our upcoming events for June. And we do have a program at the Culver with beloved columnist Dan Bernstein. He's going to be talking to us about his new book, and he's also, rumor tells me, going to be playing his trombone. So I hope you'll join us at 1:30 on Sunday for that. While the speakers get comfortable, I want to go ahead before we get started and say a few words. Inlandia Institute respectfully acknowledges and recognizes our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Luiseño, and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, the Inlandia region is home to many indigenous peoples from all over the world, and we express our gratitude to them for allowing us the opportunity to live and work on these homelands. We just finished up with the open mic, which is always so much fun. And I want to turn it over to the panel, but I want to make sure you are aware that Kimmy will be live streaming this event on Facebook, so you'll be able to look it up later if you want to, or tell other people about it. Yes?
We're not actually able to go live thanks to some technical difficulties.
I take that back.
That's okay. Sorry. You might maybe not sit close to each other. That might be the thing. So let's get straight to it.
Oh, guys, we got this. Personally, I love not going live on Facebook myself, but it always is kind of nice. Yeah, that's right, it is. So, but you will be able to see it later, and it will be on our YouTube channel, correct?
Yes,
okay.
We will share it on Facebook.
We'll share it later, and it will be on YouTube. We also have books available by these authors and by Katie at the back table for sale, and we will have book signing afterwards as well. And I hope you already found the light refreshments that we've got. If you're hungry or you're thirsty, just slip over there and get something. We had a request earlier for a handout, and we don't actually have a handout, but we would be very happy to send you the PowerPoint by email. We've got an email sign-up sheet on the back table too. So if you'd like us to email it to you, if you have questions, you want to remember things, just sign up on that and we will get it to you. We did that a time or two ago with Katie with your program that you had. So just a quick introduction of our esteemed panel here. Jo Scott Coe is right here next to me. Her essays and stories have been published widely for literary as well as academic audiences. Her third book, Unheard Witness, The Life and Death of Kathy Leisner Whitman, is coming out this fall from the University of Texas Press. So congratulations to you on that, Jo. James Luna, next to her over there, is the author of 3 books. It's still 3, right, James? 4, I thought so. All published still by Arte Publico Press. All right, I want you to help me. I'm going to say the English and you say the Spanish, okay?
Okay.
The Runaway Piggy.
El cochinito fugitivo.
Yes. Mummy in her backpack.
Una momia en su mochila.
The Place Where You Live.
El lugar donde vives.
And Growing Up on the Playground.
Nuestro patio de recreo.
Thank you very much. Piggy was awarded the 2012 Tejas Star Award, chosen by the students of the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. And then last but not least, Becca Spence-Tobias is I'm trying not to pop. Is it popping when no, it's okay. Becca Spence-Tobias is a 2022 Kiss Pitch mentee, working under the guidance of Jen DeLuca, author of the Well Met series. She is the author of On Home, which we do have for sale in back, published by Inkshares, which she's going to tell you more about, I'm pretty sure, and has a book under contract, still true, with WVU Press, about the North Central VW punk scene West Virginia punk scene of the late 1990s and early 2000s. So thank you all for being here tonight. We look forward to hearing what you have to say. And then we'll have a Q&A at the very end as well. So if you think of something, we will be able to take your questions then. So thank you very much. All right.
Cool. I think we could probably skip the first couple slides.
Can we?
Introductions.
Yeah.
Also, make it dark.
Yeah, let's do the lights.
We're going to dim the lights.
And make sure we can hear the mics too. You might want to turn up your volume.
Hi, Bob. You might
Yeah.
have to actually put it on.
Yeah.
That's better.
Okay.
That's much better.
Oh,
Yeah. It's weird.
Hold on.
It's a little, how open the pod baby door.
Sitting in the golf ball.
Whoops,
Oh, no.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can skip the first couple.
Okay.
because I think it's just-
Let me get back over to that, so. Come on, cooperate. So you already did intros. Okay, this one? Or keep going?
Yeah.
Okay,
So I'm guessing everyone's here because they're interested in publishing a book. Is that true? Is interested in publishing a book?
Becca, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me? No.
That's better. You're just going to have to.
You know what, the volume too, the volume.
If you have it by your mouth, we can hear you better.
Okay.
There we go.
Just deal with it. So you're interested in publishing a book. Has anybody published a book?
self-published or?
Yeah, any.
Any kind.
It all counts. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I don't know about everyone else. I don't want to.
No, this is
Take
good,
over.
good, yeah, please. No, it's good.
But before we get into it, I'd like to hear like maybe where you are and like what you're interested in getting from this.
Mhm.
If anyone wanted to share.
I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, what are you interested in getting from this panel? Like what would you like to know? What would be of value to you?
To know like how to submit, like if you have something that's finished and how you submit before, well, how do you, I know you have to have proofread and stuff like that, ready for submission, but like how do you get ready for submission and then who do you
Yeah,
do that to?
awesome. Thanks. I think
Yeah.
you're gonna talk about that, right?
Also, how do you find the right publisher for what you are writing specifically, because it has to match, so how do you find that match?
I think we're gonna talk about that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And specifically publishing feminist historical fiction.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to talk to you. What about that? But yes, awesome.
I'll just throw out there too that I know that there are a lot of people who are interested in learning the pros and cons of having an agent or finding an agent.
Yeah.
So if we add that into the mix, I think people at home too would be appreciative.
Cool. Okay, we'll get into that. All of that, I think we cover. But I think like the biggest thing that I hope you take away, you might have other thoughts, is that it's not like this black and white, like self-publish or your traditional publish. There's so many different ways to get your book out into the world. So I'm gonna talk about that. Okay, it's you, Jill.
Yeah, so when we think about traditional, we probably think about, you know, you have a book deal because you had an agent and your book goes on sale and the famous publisher bids for it, and then that's how you make it, or that's how your book is born into the world, right? I mean, and so that agent advocate is something that a lot of us, and in nonfiction especially, I think there's this kind of sense of you have to have somebody, and it is the person who would hustle for you. I have gone through different phases where I was looking for and then stopped looking for an agent. And with my not my most recent book, but my forthcoming book, I was at a writer's retreat and there was an agent who was there, who was, you know, just meeting writers, and this is at Mount San Antonio College, so it was a free writer's retreat, it was nothing super fancy. the agent worked in California, and I had a conversation with, this person, and then followed up with them with just kind of a preliminary, is this the kind of book that you might be interested in conversation? Not a pitch, not a proposal, and I don't think I would have done that when I first started out, number one. And then she said, no, but one of my colleagues, this is kind of up her alley. So I contacted that person. And she was super interested. But in that conversation, what I realized was she didn't understand what I was doing. And so what I thought about after having, done, independent presses, feminist press, I realized, you know what, I'm gonna try something else first, because this interest is telling me something that I kind of knew. It was validating to hear that. But I thought, you know what, I don't think this is a commercial. I don't wanna do that first. And so I talked to them about proposal format. So I used the opportunity to get an example of a proposal that they found successful, because everyone talks about the proposal or sends you to the book about the proposal. No one ever really shows you a proposal. Like an actual, what does it mean to say, who are the readers for this book? Oh, here's exactly what it looks like on the page. It was illuminating. And then I ended up finding what would look like an academic press, a university press that publishes fiction and nonfiction and not just scholarly things. So I added up in here the pre-query, which is a strategy I also use with the university press when I approached them myself, which was just, is this something you'd be interested in looking at a proposal about? Before it was like, here's a proposal. And I just adding that little extra step was useful. It saved me time, anxiety. So that's my little spiel on that. But I used to think that the agent was the thing, and then I don't know what your experiences have been, but.
Well, with mine, it was, I started by taking classes and getting feedback for the stuff I thought I wanted to publish. I took extension classes at UCR. I did a couple of classes where I shared the stuff I wanted to do, and then I found out about SCBWI, which I'm right now my stuff is children's stories. So SCBWI is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. You can join even if you're not a published author and attend their events, and that was super helpful because you hear from editors, you meet with editors, they tell you what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
And they have so many resources online, and they have one called The Book, in which it's just a list of publishers, and not just in America, but worldwide. And they tell you what the publisher's niche is. And then they have pages of agents. So doing that got me into focusing, and they have resources on how to format your material. So between the classes and the SCBWI, I had stuff that was ready to be sent out. And I knew where not to send it and where to send it. And so that was really how I found Art That Book Developed, was through that resource.
Manuscript Wishlist is another resource that I think, especially, so you were asking about where specifically or who specifically to submit to. Manuscript Wishlist is a website where agents will actually list like what exactly they're looking for, what their guidelines are, when they're open. I'm in kind of a weird spot with the whole agent thing where I have my crowdfunded book, I have my academic press book, and then I've been quarrying my his pitch book. Got an offer from a small press, and then what you do after that is you nudge everybody else who has your pages, and you basically say, I've got an offer, are you interested in it too? And I'm in that waiting period right now. So it's a whole journey. It's really a whole journey. But the biggest thing that I would say that's the difference between when I was quarrying this book to agents and ended up crowdfunding it, and then like where I am now with the book that I'm trying to figure out where it's going to go, is that I have a community and like the Whisper Networks, what I was talking about. So I would definitely say find other people who are at the exact stage that you are and be talking to them like so much the entire time. Who are you querying? What was their response? What was their what was their time getting back to you? What exactly did they say? Because it's better, so what people will say is that it's better to have no agent than a bad agent.
Yeah.
So with my Whisper network, I've heard horror stories of, they dropped me over email for no reason late at night. Not gonna call you that person. My book didn't sell in the first month, like they dropped me, like things like that. So it's better, like we're gonna show you so many other ways to get it out there if the agent group doesn't work for you.
And I just wanted to add to that too. I think that the agent thing, because it's kind of like, it's like it's going to solve all the problems. People do treat it kind of like unwise dating. Like the first person who comes up to you in the bar who's interested and says that they'd like to get with you, they might not be the person to really build a life with. And so, and I hear that all the time, where people are just so excited and flattered and oh my God, we leave, and then it might not be the match, and then you're waiting, by the phone, and all these things that are similar to like, yeah, and a friend of mine was just talking about that. She had a lot of success with individual pieces, so, things that were getting into notable listings and things like that for, essays that she'd written, but as a collection, she was having a harder time. Once she got the agent, she thought, oh, but similar kind of stuff is going on, right? In the marketplace, and they have to be able to make money, and if they, so it's, yeah.
And you never, this is probably a whole other topic, but like, I feel like you never feel like you've really made it. You tell yourself, okay,
This is the thing.
if I get this deal, then I can be a real writer. If I get an agent, I'll be a real writer, but it's like an ongoing.
Yeah.
And agents can be specialists, just like writers can be specialists. You might find somebody who likes your stuff, but you want to make sure that they are the person who is specialized in that field. I've met agents who like my stuff, but they don't do children's writing. So they wouldn't help me in any way. They don't have the right connections. They don't have the skill set to look at something and decide, okay, this will work or this won't. So yeah, be picky. As picky as you are with your own stuff, be picky with anything that an agent might need to do too. And do you know DivPen? We tried DivPen.
Yes. And so yeah, I did Kiss Pitch, which is why I got my mentor.
Kiss, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great idea to talk about too. That's another resource. If you're on Twitter, there are these things called pitch events, which can be like specialized things where agents will watch all the tweets with those hashtags. Please call me if if you're totally not following me. Do I need to roll it back a little bit? Okay, so Twitter, you can send messages, and hashtag is where you do like the pound sign, and then you put a phrase, and if you click on that phrase, it brings up all of the messages that have that little phrase in them. So there are things called pitch events where you use certain phrases, and agents who are interested in DivPit is like diversity pitch. There's the Pit Light, which I think is like light, fluffy stories. There's like Pit Dark, which is like horror and thriller. There are like Black Voices Pit event, like they're very specialized events. And then you know that the agents that are going there and liking your messages for those specific tweets are interested in repping like your specific story. So those are a good way to do it. But I will say it is also very like nerve-wracking, and you have to spend the day like kind of watching and it's like very exciting and adrenaline, and like I put my pitch out there, and then like ups and downs. Oh, somebody liked it. Oh, they're not a real agent. Somebody liked it and they have no idea what this pitch event is. So prepare yourself mentally if you do a pitch event. That's right.
And I was just going to add another thing that's that in terms of just looking, like I troll acknowledgments for any book that I love. So I read the acknowledgments in the back, and often agents are thanked there. It gives you kind of like, you start noticing patterns, like there's that agent name again. And also the books that you're likely to do that with are ones that you love or things you're reading to get prepared for your own work. And so there's often a lot of really interesting kind of insider information there in the thanks to my agent so-and-so, my editor such and such, and that can be helpful. Even if it's not somebody that you would approach, it tells you a little bit, like maybe it links you to, oh, this agency exists that does this specialty, so yeah.
Should we talk about comp titles? That would be
I mean, go ahead, yeah, sure.
I don't,
Uh,
it's okay.
Maybe we should, yeah.
Okay.
We should,
Okay, let's go to the next.
oh, yeah. Okay, so you want to start with this one?
Yeah, so right now I have a book about the 1990s punk scene that's under contract with WVU Press. And it is a good option for traditional publishing, I would say without an agent. You were
Yeah.
saying with an agent.
No, without.
Oh, without,
For me,
okay.
without, for sure.
Because you can go directly to them. But I'd say not even just nonfiction. A lot of university presses now are branching out more into fiction. So especially if you have something that's place-based, I would say, look at the university
Right.
presses in those regions. Also, if this is the place, look at Atlanta. So my experience with WVU Press was I wrote an essay that was kind of like a personal memoir. An editor there read it and said this would be really good for my series. Would you turn it into a book proposal? I did that, and then what happens next is just the proposal goes to peer review. And so that means people who are in your subject will look at your proposal and say, we like it, we don't like it, or we like it like with these caveats. And so for me, they said, we like it, but it needs to be more academic. You should look at these sources, these sources, these sources. You then have the chance to change your proposal, say, I will do this, or I won't, and this is why. And then they can kind of look at it and say, yes, we do or don't want to publish it, and give you an advance contract. I changed it, they approved it, I wrote a whole book, made it very academic, just like they wanted. And then the kicker is, they sent it to a different peer review committee to review the actual manuscript, and this peer review committee said, we love it, but it's too academic, this should be a memoir. So I got to go back and write it again as a memoir, and now it's out for peer review again. So that is my experience with University Press.
So, yeah, I mean, I think, so if I wasn't clear before, what I was deciding was that I wanted to approach after I had this encounter with the agent, it was favorable, but also it felt like it was off track, that they were gonna pull my project off track. I was like, I'm gonna approach this University Press first and roll that out before, right? And so, yeah, I mean, like, when we think about University Press, you think about textbooks, you think about esoterica, like there's 10 people who care about that topic, right? But there really is, I mean, University of Nebraska Press does poetry, fiction, they're really known for that. There also is University of Tennessee, there's a queer writer on Twitter. He does a lot of, doing a lot of activism right now because he's in Tennessee. But the University of Tennessee published, I think it's called like Queer Poems for Red States or something like that. It's fantastic. I haven't gotten my copy yet, but it just came out. And so there's a lot that you might not expect in there. And like you said, it's an open doorway. My experience of peer review was similar, although they had an editorial advisory board that reviewed the proposal, and then it was a manuscript that got the peer review. Peer review during the pandemic was interesting. I had a peer reviewer ghost it. The thing I would just say, and then it was okay, like it was fine, but the thing about university presses is that stability is there. In a commercial press, if your editor goes, it could sideline your project. Like that might have been the one person who was there to advocate. So with the university system, they are already kind of funding and there are multiple parties who are invested, and if there's turnover, your project has probably been adopted and they want to keep it. They want it to work versus, oh, it's costing us money, so-and-so left type of thing. So again, there's not a ton of money in publishing really anywhere, but that stability for me was a real attraction.
Yeah. So my editor actually just left, and I was very nervous.
Yes.
But then, like the next day, somebody emailed me, so I can absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Well, even my publisher is based at the University of Houston.
Okay. Oh.
So, but they are. The publisher is called Arte Publico, so they concentrate on anything with a Latino or Latinx experience. Their children's imprint is called Piñata Books. And so there's a huge connection there. And what I found working with them is that they're so regional that I get a lot of visits. I get to go to Texas a lot with these books because they promote their books in Texas.
Yeah.
So there's that market right there, and then there's that connection right there. They know people in the school districts. They know people at bookstores. And
Yeah.
so it's super personal when I do visits there, and that connection is really, really strong. And the people that you were saying, the people in that office have been there since the inception of that
Yeah.
imprint, and they're gonna be there. And yeah, it's a super strong connection.
Yeah. The one thing I would just add to, I think I put funding up there just because, you know, nothing is free. Like if people are either kicking in together or it's funded by a system of some kind. And the thing that's interesting with, if you look, like if you go to catalogs or go to information like University of California Press, right? And you look at what are their series, and you look at what are those series, and they often have a link that says funded by, the grant to, and the endowment of, and it can kind of tell you, oh, this is they do a series of history books. This is a series of poems by Latino poets. This is and that kind of thing is interesting because then when you pitch them, when you propose to them, you can say, I thought maybe this might fit in this shelf of your collection, you know, that kind of thing. And it is much more personal without that intermediary of the agent.
Was there a question? I think it's on.
I'm extremely excited about the idea of university presses. I don't know if it's the elephant in the room or not, but like, are books a viable medium anymore? Do you know what I mean? Kind of like, I mean, they're being banned, so they're getting more attention now. So
Makes it sexy.
but is it a medium that has a future with like clip piece, you know, the new thing?
ChatGPT.
Yeah, that thing. I mean, people that are creating, that want to create with their minds and not with the computer, what's the viability of it as going forward?
That's a big question.
Can I throw something out there just as a teacher?
Yes.
For years I've heard, oh, teachers can be replaced by computers. Teachers can be replaced by computers. Then COVID hit. We weren't replaced by computers. You know, they tried distance learning and they tried learning everything on a computer, and you're not in the classroom and you're in a screen. It just didn't work. So yeah, this ChatGPT thing might be super cool and might be a fun toy. I don't think it'll replace what you feel in your story. It is as good as you can say it. No one else can say it like you did.
I saw a sign during the WGA writer's strike. I don't know if you followed that at all. That said computers don't have childhood trauma, and that made me feel a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, this is also why I think the university presses right now are an interesting market to think about, because they are investing in long-term intellectual, artistic preservation, right? So, and again, universities are under attack too, and education and everything. So it's like, is anything viable? I guess we have to fight for it. Like, I would say that. But it is an interesting kind of slightly invisible market where, again, there is that stability, there is that coherence, you know, some press, I think the University of California press is more than 100 years old. I don't know. University of Texas is 50, University of Houston, I don't know. But yeah, so there is an advantage sometimes to being in the not-for-profit environment. If you can do that, then you know, figure out ways to make that work.
Because I think another part of your question, like aside from the whole AI thing, is like the publishing as an industry, which this really is about. Because traditional publishing, like when it was if you're thinking of it still as black and white, you know, like they're the big 5 publishers, or you type it up on your laptop and send it out, like that. I don't know if that is going to be viable forever, because I mean, I can talk about capitalism.
Right.
Yeah, I think that all these gray areas that we're talking about are like what will make it continue to be viable. And something that I have had to do personally is like get out of my head that like the only way to be a success as a writer. It's like to be a success in Big Five publishing.
And you have to remember too, like if Paris Hilton or whoever named your celebrity, if you're in the queue behind them and they offer a project, you know what I mean? Like you go to the bottom, or oh, the publicity money is gone, or so. I mean, you can find you can look for stories of people talking about being. I mean, go to a bookstore or browse around and look at those imprints, even the Big Five. Have you heard of all of them? Are their books all thriving? You know, kind of the reality check of that can be a little encouraging too, you know, because you want that community around your book. And that's something that even if you get that Penguin contract, if you're off, you know, yeah, we're glad to have you, but you're, you know, so.
And there are statistics about how like they will take a chance on some books, but like these big publishers, they basically throw them at the wall and see what sticks. And if you don't, like, they're not going to care about your career. Whereas like smaller publishers or university presses will be much more.
Are you going to pay for your publicist? Like, I mean, the same questions that you'd be asking if you were doing indie publishing, you might get confronted with a big publisher. I mean, so anyway.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, my phone has decided it's frozen.
Yeah, so like I said, I found my publisher through the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators site, and it was just a good fit. I did try other publishers, and you know, you're gonna get rejections and things like that. Well, actually, nowadays you don't get rejections; they just don't respond to you. I don't know if you guys have that. So I just have a Google sheet where I put the date, the title of the work, the date I sent it out, the person I sent it to, and I have a column for response, but most of my responses say no response. And then I wait 6 months. After 6 months, I assume it's okay to send it out. I'm just going to add something that isn't about publishing, but it's about writing. I have this thing where I after the 6 months, I bought myself a treat. Because acceptance or rejectance, I bought myself a treat, because if I send something out, that means I finished something. And if I finished something, that means I did work of a writer.
Yeah.
So make sure that you pat yourself on the back all through the process. But anyway, I really like working with a smaller set. Like I said, I know everybody in that office. I've been to the office multiple times. They know people in the area. They drive me to places. I get personal calls from them, not from a secretary. So it's very, very much a strong personal connection to content. And that's worked for me very well. And you just, like I said, just want to make sure you do your research. You know, as much as we work researchers, writers, we got to research our publishers too. Does this fit? I've been online and I've looked at this. I bought books from the bookstore just to see, does this really match what I want to say, what I've written? Buy the books, go to the local bookstore, and look at the catalogs online and make sure that you're not wasting their time and you're not wasting your own time by sending it to somebody that doesn't match what you've written.
Yeah, I mean, I would say too, like in the quality thing, the University of Texas, because I was doing work, this book is located me in Texas a lot, so Houston and in Austin as well, but I started kind of paying attention. I started seeing, you know, it's funny just when you're like, you read Poets and Writers Magazine, or you're looking at the newspaper, the book review or whatever, and I started kind of noticing this logo. You know, I'm like, oh, University of Texas Press, that's a classy looking logo. And it kind of I started to notice that it seemed that they had done some very intentional design choices in the last, this has been like for 10 years. I was kind of just watching them. and I was paying attention to their cover design. And then I started looking at their catalogs, and I bought some books, and I'm like, these look good. They clearly, like, you can tell, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, you can tell by the way a book feels in your hand, like, would you be comfortable with those folks handling your project? Would that be a good home for your work? And that consistency, no matter whether it's the trade that they're pushing or this is a more academic for, you know, a smaller audience across the board. So that's another thing, just kind of noticing. And the longevity piece too. When a new press comes out, there's sometimes they will, I'm trying to think of something that's new right now, but like they may get, you know, like, wow, this is something, a new magazine or new journal that's out. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And then kind of watch it for a couple of years, like, does it sustain, and are they continuing? So, yeah.
And keep in mind, they also have writing competitions. You don't have to publish a book per se. They get a chapter of your book makes a really good short story, and send that out to those kind of things. And that just kind of gives you legs, and then gets you used to getting that kind of feedback and exposure. And it lets you know that, hey, this is something that works, and that people are responding to it as well. I've had essays published in anthologies that went along those lines too. So
Yeah.
Should we move on? I don't even remember what this is. It's an indie band.
they look good.
Yeah. Oh, okay. This is just like the title page. Okay, so good reasons to go indie. They are not all good. Yeah. I don't know who put these.
I put a couple down. I mean, I just to start, you know, like again thinking about Inlandia, right? So Inlandia had a Literary Journeys online journal. It started publishing books. There's a community with events, and so writers are coming together. They're selling books. They're talking about writing. There's workshops. Those kinds of connections help you kind of start talking about these things with other people who are doing it. And so I thought that was, you know, that was a key thing. And then also maybe your book is not traditional, quote unquote, in any kind of genre form. So often indie presses are taking more risk in terms of form or shape. Maybe you have some essays and some poems together or something like that. And maybe a traditional publisher wouldn't do that. So just a couple ideas there.
Yeah, I was thinking also, like, if you feel or know that you have the resources to go indie, and the downsides of giving more money to a bigger publisher outweigh what they're offering you, is another good reason. So some smaller publishers, or I mean some bigger publishers too, like you were saying, you're gonna have to do your marketing no matter what.
Yeah.
If you know that you're doing your marketing no matter what, and you also have the resource to get a good cover, you have resources to figure out editing on your own, there might not be a benefit to giving away 70% of your royalties.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And if you have the community and they're like, we know you, we want to celebrate this book, you know, and you don't have to get a call from the secretary or something like that, they're clearly the touch points are way worth it. Yeah.
They take 70%.
That's my comment, yeah. So I'm gonna get, I believe that we should be really transparent with what we get in this industry. I'm gonna get 8% of the royalties from my academic press book.
Yeah.
I get 30 from this.
Yeah. I think that's opposite. Yeah.
It's so.
And then someone could say, yeah, but volume. But then I would say, yeah, but volume what? You may end up selling the same amount of copies.
Distribution is something to look at. Like,
Yes.
can they get you into bookstores that you couldn't get into on your own? Then yes, maybe it's worth it. If not,
Yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
yeah,
When you say 8% of the royalties,
yes.
so if the royalties are 10%
Oh,
of the
sorry, I
net
get
profits.
8% of like so like I get if they sell it for $20, I get I don't know $8 for every 5 books they sell.
Okay, so it's like 8% of the net
Of the- right.
cost or the net proceeds.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and from
And then
the
if you-
publishing end, that actually is fair
Yeah.
because it's expensive.
Yeah,
to publish, but I can't speak to the other kinds of presses. We're just the indie presses.
And that
Yeah.
comes after your initial check. When they sign you, you get a check and then,
Sometimes.
yeah, sometimes, yeah, sometimes.
not always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sometimes you have to wait until you get your first check. It might be a year or two, and sometimes they give you an upfront, but you won't hear anything back for a couple of years until they've sold enough to
Mhm.
give you royalties.
And so that could be another benefit of having an agent, actually, and it's something I wish that I had known when I sold my academic book, my memoir.
Yeah.
Is that when you get an offer from a smaller press, you can also kind of bump and nudge agents with that offer because they can help represent you with that. So
Mhm.
maybe I would have gotten 10%, but then it would have gone to the agent, but then I'd have somebody else to help me sell the next book kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that at that time.
And that often is, depends on if there's no other middleman. So if it's not going through, if it's going through Amazon, then there's another little shave off of that, because they have overhead and, so, yeah.
I did a lot for an hour.
Yeah, I mean, you think about even with a really large advance, if someone gets a major advance and you start calculating that on hourly,
You know, you don't want to do that.
yeah, so, yeah.
Let's go ahead to bad reasons
Oh.
to go indie.
Yeah, I mean, I just add, yeah, I mean, I think these are pretty self-explanatory. I think one of them is the second one that kind of meant, like they're just going to tell the editor what to do. I mean, hopefully, if you have that relationship, you're going to have a partnership. But they're not, right, Katie? They're not just like do my bidding, or something like that. But that would be probably more on the self-publishing side, like if you just want to do that. But if you're going into collaboration,
Even in a children's book, there was, I wrote this is like a gingerbread boy story, but it's a pig cookie from the Mexican bakery, and I sent it, and the pig in this one, in my manuscript, spoke Spanish. Spanglish, really. And the publisher said, no, we publish bilingually, but they're separate. You don't mix the languages, so I had to be okay with that.
Yeah. Was that a big battle? Like, was that a big conversation?
No, you know what? That was cool. I was cool with it because it was going to get published. This was the first one.
Yeah.
There were other things that, like with this one, this is a kid, like just a day in a child's neighborhood. I had a page where the kids were riding their bikes, and the illustrator said, "Oh, kids shouldn't be on bikes in the street." And I'm like, "Where do you live?" Yeah, really. Where do you live? And what did you do as a child? But
oh gosh,
the illustrator got to mandate that change, so I had to take that page out and write a new page. So, yeah, and same with this one. They published this book after I had sent them this manuscript and they rejected it. And I was talking with the editors on a visit, and they said, "Do you have another story?" And I said, "Yeah, it's a story about a little girl goes to Mexico, comes back, and there's a mummy in her backpack." They said, "Great, send it to us." And I was kind of cheeky. I said, "I already did," and he didn't like it. And they said, "Well, tell us about it." And they wanted to hear what the story was. And see, I originally wrote this as a custodian's diary. I thought, oh, cool, I'll have this great series. Of course, everybody wants a series. And it's the custodian seeing everything in the school, because I thought, as a teacher, who sees everything? The custodian, right? And they said, no, that's the adult's point of view. This is a kid's book. You need to write this from the kid's point of view. So I spent 6 months rewriting the story. Then they accepted it. So, yeah. It's a give and take. It's a give and take.
So when I made this slide, I was thinking good and bad reasons to go indie/self-publish. And I wanted to bring up, yes, that it will be so much easier. Please don't self-publish thinking like, I can just do it and then it's out there. You still need to go through all of the steps. You still need to do editors. You still need to get a good cover design. You're still going to need to proofread it. You're still going to have to, it's not going to be easier. It's actually a lot of work. And then the other thing that I've been struggling with lately is thinking of self-publishing as kind of like a moral choice. Or like, I'm going to do this to fight the man and like, but like, you still have to use Amazon. It's not really
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
hurting anybody except yourself. So if that is your only reason for choosing this, don't do it. But there are lots of good reasons.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Let's go to self-publishing. Oh, crowdfunding. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I crowdfunded this book, and I actually did it because I met somebody at an Atlantia event. I think it was like
The Indie Authors Fair?
Indie Authors Fair,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
And I met somebody from Telekinesis, who's a small press here. Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Gibbons? Okay. I see a face.
yeah. Joe's published by him and.
Oh, cool.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so I met
this-
Mark.
yeah.
And he was like, have you heard of Inkshares? I think that might actually be a good route for you. And so I looked into it, and basically what I had to do is I had to prove that there was a market for my book first, and then it went through kind of a traditional process. So I got 750 pre-orders for this. It was very difficult, also not an easy route. I don't know if that was easier than quarrying, honestly, because I had to message every single person that I knew and beg them to pre-order my book that did not exist yet. It was very awkward, but made it happen, and then I got amazing editors and distribution and cover design. Pitfalls are like, yes, it will strain relationships because it is like a full-time thing to run a crowdfunding campaign. It's not like just something that you can kind of have to do. You have to like really commit to it. You're like researching the psychology of crowdfunding and like, how do you get people to feel an urgency to buy your book, not just someday, but today. What are different goals and how do you like get people excited through rewards and stuff. It was a full-time job for 2 months. But I'm very glad that I did it because before I did that, I thought that my book was ready to publish, and I would have just continued quarrying it and maybe self-published it, and it would not have been up to par. So through that, I learned how to really do developmental edits and what the publishing process is like. Very thankful I did that. I will say this is a new development. I would not do this through Inkshares at this moment. They're in a position of upheaval, as you were saying, watch for people's longevity. There's a lot of turnover there right now, and they're having significant delays in royalty distribution right now.
Oh.
So I would not do that this way, but there are lots of other options for crowdfunding. GoFundMe, I'm sure you've all heard of. The good part of that is that you wouldn't have to reach a certain number, and it's like, yes, I'm published, or no, I'm not. You can use whatever funds that you got to pay for an editor, to pay for marketing, to pay for cover design. The bad side of that is that you don't have the psychological urgency when you're asking people, because they know that, so they don't necessarily feel like their order is as urgent. Yeah, I would say if you want to crowdfund, research techniques well before you jump into actually doing it is the main.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
So, because I think Mark, this is interesting. So, Mark Gibbons is my publisher for Mass, Telekinesis, and I remember him describing a story about there's this woman and she's doing this thing. What is it called?
Inkshares.
Inkshares, and I was like, wow, that sounds really stressful.
It was very stressful.
And so the way that it worked though, did Inkshares publish the book
They published the book.
on
So
the
if I
contingency
got-
of sales in advance?
If
right?
I sold 750 copies in 90 days, they would publish the book.
Okay, so that also is a little different than if you did a GoFundMe to kind of fund the project and then you still have to find a publisher. Okay, gotcha.
Yes, so I would say that you could crowdfund it and then self-publish it and use the crowdfunding funds to pay for the resources that we've said you will still need to invest in, would be my advice if I were gonna do this
And
again.
there's nothing comparable to Inkshares right now.
There's something called Unbound, but it's mostly UK authors.
Okay.
And so I think they have more of a selective process before you can even like go up on their site. Inkshares was just, if you get the pre-orders, we'll put it out.
Such a cool idea,
It is very cool.
but interesting that it's.
They're just, as a company, they're having a hard time.
Yeah.
Because publishing is hard right now. Paper's expensive,
Yeah,
shipping
yeah.
is.
Right, wow. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on crowdfunding?
Oh, whoops.
Oh.
Do you want me to go back?
No, I think. co-ops?
So I don't know a whole lot about co-ops. The co-ops that I have seen in action were literary journal co-ops mostly. I brought an issue of Spillway. So Spillway is now, you know, a literary journal. It's still.
I think they're going.
Did they just finish?
No, actually, I think Moontide picked them up.
Okay.
Books.
I mean, you know, and it's interesting how like journals have a life cycle, right? So if you can make it for 5 years, that's amazing. If you can make it for 10, like whoa. And even if the materials are not quote unquote fine materials, that longevity piece is huge. Like if you somebody who's advocating for their writers and making something it's just amazing. And I just brought this. I found it on my shelf. This was a true co-op effort. This came out of a group of poets who were working with Jack Grapes, who was the editor of On the Bus, and he also had kind of a cooperative effort called Bomb Shelter Press for a long time. I don't know if that's still functioning or not. But in any case, if you look at this, you can see every single poem in here is a different kind of paper. And the way that this worked, this is back in 1993, so this is kind of one of those waves of Indian poetry, you know, poetry life in the city of LA and the surrounding area. And so all of these writers printed their own pages. They knew what the dimensions were supposed to be. They cut them up. They came together. They collated them. And then Spillway put the cover on, did the binding, and we had this giant reading. And the pages are not all in the same order in every book. And it's just this beautiful thing. When you think about zine culture and all of that, right, I think sometimes we don't think about the co-op kind. I mean, like this was truly, and then they became much more professionalized and streamlined and everything because this is difficult to manage. I mean, I think there are probably, I was looking at this, maybe 80, you know, writers, and they did things like, there's something from Charles Bukowski in here. There are a couple of other, you know, kind of known names, and then all these other folks. And we came together and did it, and did a reading of Beyond Baroque. But this is a kind of a neat thing. And I think Jack was doing that too. Jack Grapes was doing that for On the Bus. Even when it was looking like this, people would pay in a little bit. And it wasn't so much, he would talk about it as it's not paying to publish, it's paying to produce. And we're anteing in. And you're in, and we're all in, and we're all on the bus, and that's, you know, that's kind of a Ferlinghetti thing. Anyway, so it's interesting how those models, again, like how they come and go, or how feasible they are, how sustainable they are. But if you have a group, and I was just thinking about this now, like you really need to know what you're all going to contribute, what's the timeline for that. You know, if you have a writer's group and you are tried and true and you trust each other, it's like, okay, you know, you're going to be the printer person, you're going to be the edit person, we're going to do, like this was lots of individual work, but like your book is in the fall and your book is going to be in the spring and my book will be next summer. Like you could do something like that. But again, you have to know the terms and everybody agrees and you have to trust each other. It's not just kind of, you know, so, yeah.
That Spillway sounds a lot like the fanzine environment of the 1980s with science fiction and game world.
Yeah, I mean, totally. And it's, you know, it was very kind of punk rock, you know, kind of to do, yeah. So, but how to start one, I mean, I think they have to be organic.
My experience with the writing co-op is a whole group of people who had published with InkShares decided we wanted to put more things out without going through that process.
Oh, awesome.
And we had the skills within our group. So we had somebody who was a professional graphic designer. We had somebody who was a marketer, like in her profession. And so we all worked together and we did a couple of anthologies. And we also have a podcast, it's the Indie Writer Podcast. Check that out. We talk about the process.
Oh, awesome. Yes. And so is the podcast a thing that's kind of endured out of that, or are you still publishing also?
There's a new anthology so I was part of starting the first two anthologies and then had to drop out because I had two kids in school.
Yeah.
And it's gone on, which is exciting.
That's
They
awesome.
just put out their first today, actually.
That's awesome.
Their first anthology that I was not a part of.
And that's really cool.
And where they did, it's called Mythos, and they like took different myths and did retellings of them. It's very cool.
Really cool.
Yeah, so that's Writing Block without a K. Writing yellows.
Okay.
Let's talk about self-publishing.
I don't know.
No experience in that. No. I have a friend who does it, but she has to, she uses Kickstarter as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she has to find the artists, find the company that will print it, and she has to market herself, website herself. It's worked for her, but she's half writer, half business person. So
Right.
actually it's more like 1/4 writer, 3/4 business person. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I put this note just there about the small scale chapbook. So if you were, and that wouldn't even have to be poems, a collection of poems. It could be like this is a longer essay, it's 20 pages, and you make it yourself, you bind it yourself, and you go to readings and you sell it for $5, and it's kind of a calling card for you. So on that scale, it's portable immediately. Like you don't have to necessarily have like, I've got a web page where I'm selling it, distributing it, and how's that going to work, and how do I get people there? Because you just you're activating it yourself, right? But then if you don't have a community or you live far from the readings, and then that gets more complicated. So, but, yeah.
Whether you were saying things were complicated, I'm thinking, the whole entire time I'm thinking, you know how you have mixtapes and people had CDs and they sold them out of the trunk of their car.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you do that. And
Yeah.
it-
Get a booth at Arts Walk.
Like you were saying, so punk rock. When I think about like punk bands that I like that put out their CDs like by themselves, I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. They're like real musicians, but I have this like block in my head where it feels different when it's writing, where I'm gonna succeed like for real. But it's not different. It's all just like this internalized.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And the one thing I think with self-publishing, although a lot of indie publishers do it too, is the print-on-demand technology. Do you know what that is? So that's in the traditional kind of model, a publisher is like, well, we're going to print 500 copies of your book, or 2,000 copies of your book, or 1 million, probably not, but whatever. And with print-on-demand, what has happened is that if the publisher wants to print one copy, they print one copy. If no one ever needs it or buys it, they printed one copy, that's it. So the overhead is different. The problems are with things like returns, and there are some complications with that, but like a lot of people, if you wanted to make a book, I know Todd is working on something, you want to put that book together, you could put that together, and print on demand would allow you to make 20 copies for your family. And it probably would not be exorbitantly expensive, and that could be your distribution, and that is what you wanted to do, and you could do it, and it could be produced nicely. You could, have an editor, you could have a designer, a cover image on there, it could be really nicely bound, and that's possible now in a way it wasn't unless you had a friend with a printing press, even 30 years ago, plus. So, I mean, Lightning Source was kind of one of the first, but that was in the late 90s, really, right?
I think so. I mean, Inlandia uses Lightning Source, and they've since developed another self-publishing arm, which is Ingram Spark. Now, it's true, you can order just one copy, but the cost for one, there is still a volume discount. So if you only order 20 copies, they might be like $20 a book, whereas if you order 200 copies, they're going to be $5 a book.
Yeah.
So pros and cons. The return issue too. I think that all comes from you and what you decide. Some people say no returns, but it's not because of the print on demand. It's the publisher, whoever makes the decision.
Yeah.
Do you want to give your books away, or do you want to sell your book?
Both. Okay.
Yeah, I want people to read them, but it would be nice to have the hours that go into them acknowledged as work that went into them too. But mostly I want people to read them.
Yeah.
We're gonna, is this the last one?
Yeah, I think
I
so.
think, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we've gotta wrap it up pretty quick, so.
Okay.
Okay.
You should never pay somebody to publish your book. I mean, there are caveats, so we're talking about that, but if somebody's saying, we want to publish you, just invest this $10,000, run away, please. It's the main thing to look out for.
Yeah, or to consider your book. Sometimes I've seen that too. Yeah, like we'll look at it, pay us to look at it.
Consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should always be paying you or have the promise of paying you. You should not be paying them. I think some of these other.
Yeah, I just put overpromisers, you know, people who are super, like, they're hustling you a little too hard and you're like, I don't know.
We'll get you to the top of the Google list with your title.
Yeah, weird things like that. And then the erratic track records, that kind of goes back to the Whisper networks and things, you know, where you start talking to people about, yeah, this person this is their Twitter profile, or this is the way that they represent themselves in public, but I know 3 people who had a really terrible, like, soul-crushing experience working with them where their work was disrespected, or the royalty, wow, they were going to get the royalties and they didn't, or just weird things. And so listen to your friends, like, kind of know who you trust. Yeah.
Have somebody, if you have a contract, have somebody look it over who knows what they're talking about. I've had some red flags with an offer where, also talk to somebody who's been published with them, because that's another red flag. An author told me that a small publisher changed her first line without asking, which was like a huge nope for me. But then, like, there's a weird thing in one of the contracts that I saw where it was like, not only do they have like the first option for any sequels, but they stopped anybody else. Like, they stopped you from selling sequels to anybody else.
Oh, like a non-compete for the rest of the
for that series.
For that series,
but still,
yeah.
it was just too much. So just look at the contract, have somebody look it over if you can.
What's the difference between the handshake agreement and promise to publish?
I mean, I put that there because that happened to me. So Lydia, if I was like, hey Lydia, I love your poems. I want to publish your book. Your next book, I want it. And you know, you knew that I had published a couple books and stuff like that. Even if we're like super, super close buddies, you want to get me to, let's talk about the terms of that agreement. Let's just talk about what that's going to look like in a rough timeline, and my obligation to your work and your obligation to me, and maybe even subject to some amendment, but even just writing something down, because that can get strange. So.
I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
Great, thank you
Yeah.
very much, everyone. We learned so much. Oh my gosh. I think you may want to have the slideshow PowerPoint just to reference and come back and look at some of the specifics. And we do have the sign up at that. Now, I had promised a Q&A at the end, but I feel like a lot of people were able to ask questions as we go along. Does anyone have a question now? I know I told you, if they don't mention Pelicanesis, we'll ask them about it. Do you feel like you have a little idea, or it's a local publisher? What, you know?
And Mark is also doing Bamboo Dart Press now as well. I think he's doing more projects with Bamboo Dart, which is more chapbook size, but cross-genre. Katie has...
Yeah, I'm over here. I moved on you. I got it.
And I'm in the way.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and both of those are pretty interesting in their model in that they don't have a submissions portal. They don't ask for submissions. They're just organically found. So
That sounds very mysterious, but it
It
seems
is.
to work pretty well for them.
Yeah.
So,
they get, I think, a lot of people who want to publish with them.
so questions, Lydia?
How do you feel like about like hedge funds, like people, like Silicon Valley people investing in books? I mean, do you know what I mean? Kind of like people that have money that want to make more money and like they want to invest in your book. I mean, does that ever happen, or is that a thing? Or
I haven't heard of that. No, I don't know.
That was like a thing, or that was a rare.
It could be. I don't know.
They're fighting the AI right now because they don't want to pay for content and
Yeah.
things like that. That's my sense, but.
All right, well, that's good. We have promised the library that we will be out of here by 8:30, but then we still have about 20 minutes or so. So we have books for sale and back, and if you would like to buy one, or you brought one, or you already bought one, we have the authors up here ready and willing to sign. So
If you want to look at this, I just don't want to lose it. It's so cool.
That is very cool.
Did you want to add anything, Katie?
No, that's it.
That's it. So thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you, everybody.